He said, what have we made? What have we done? We've made a movie about a dishwasher who goes and fucks a lot of women in New York. What have we done? And I knew he was having an anxiety attack. And I grabbed his shoulders and I looked at him and I said, John, we will live the rest of our artistic lives in the shadow of this great masterpiece. That's what I said to him. And he looked up at me and said, do you think so? And I said, I'm absolutely certain of it. I had to bring him out of it. I had to say the most extravagant thing to bring him out of it, right? And that was from God, from God to John. And it did bring him out, but it turned out to be true.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Jon Voight is an actor. He sat down with me in cyberspace to talk about the work. Do you have a typical way that you like to begin your preparation process when you get a new character?
Well, that's an interesting question, Peter. I do a lot of daydreaming. I was a daydreamer since I was a little kid. I think that's why I'm an actor. I'm a daydreamer. So I just let things drop into my psyche, and I don't do any kind of very specific thing to begin. I just allow it to marinate. That's what Anthony Quinn used to say, or said, or at least I read it. He marinates. And that's a very good way of expressing it. You marinate, you let it drift into you, you know. And then you have to do very many specific things. And then many things come to you. In acting class, sometimes with sensory work, they would say, get very relaxed and then put out your hand. You're going to play a character of this kind, put out your hand and see what comes into it. Maybe it's a glove, maybe it's, a golf ball, whatever it could be, Imagine something coming into your hand that's appropriate for the role. I mean, all sorts of imagination is employed in some of these little exercises, right? But that's what I do. I just imagine things, and try. Sometimes I talk to myself. Sometimes I'll read the script and I'll play around with it. But those, I start slow, like going into very cold water or something. You start little by little to get used to the cold.
Yeah.
And then things fill themselves in. I see somebody. I remember I was going to do this role for Holes. I was going to play Mr. Sir in the movie Holes with Shia LaBeouf. And I knew I was going to have to change myself physically in every way. So I didn't know, but I enjoyed the character. I enjoyed the idea of playing this dopey character. So I went out with a family that I was familiar with, and we were having a dinner, and there was a guy who was a kind of a homeless fellow. So I guess he had a place to lay down, but he had a cowboy hat on, and he had a camera that he had. I think he was taking pictures for a couple of bucks or something here and there. And he had this strange walk, almost like a Groucho Marx walk, And I said to the people with me, I said, that's the walk I'm going to use for Mr. Sir. I mean, as soon as I saw that, I said it and I shared it with everybody. And sure enough, that's what I did. I used that walk, this crazy, wild walk, and the energy of that guy too, a little bit. And then another piece might come that you needed, I had a person that had a very nasal delivery. I don't like this here. Like that. Yeah. All right. You believe that. And that's the way I'm going to talk. And then there was a fellow who I did this little movie, this little Western that nobody pretty much saw and wasn't a very good part for me. I wasn't, but my agent said, you got to work with John Sturges. He discovers young talent. I said, I don't like this part. It's not good. oh, you got to do it. And that's the last time I ever listened to somebody saying something that told me against my instinct, you know. But it was fun, and I met Jason Robards in that picture. But it was, you know, I had a lot of fun in many ways. But this guy was a wrangler, and he had this wonderful horse. His name was Wayne Cutlip. Wayne, if you're out there listening, or your relatives are out there listening, I send my love. Wayne used to said to me during this thing at the bar, he said, "I tell you, John, the way you train an animal, you punish and reward. Punish and reward. That's the way you do it. Punishment and reward. That's the way you train an animal." Like that, right? Well, I never forgot that. So when I did holes, I used it in this. I said, chili beans, little chili beans. I called it the wards, the guys who were digging holes, these kids. Chili beans. I know how to deal with that. Punishment and reward. Punishment and reward. You know, like that. So I'm trying to impress Sigourney Weaver. So I use that. So I pick up things here and there. And then there's an overlay of many other things too. But then when you get to the set, you see what people are doing, and that's it. And then you respond to it. And sometimes just a glimpse while you're working on a scene, something will come to you, and all of a sudden, it'll change your emotion. You know, you'll be in a scene, and something will happen too. You don't plan on it, but just a touch of a feeling that comes from a relationship you have, your father or whatever it is, and it'll bring something to that scene. So it helps. It helps to keep in an open, relaxed state of mind, and always looking for what might be discovered. Go into the scene, you know, nice and easy. Just walk into it. Forget everything, all mental tricks. Go walk in and see what you feel.
You said that Sandy Meisner gave you a structure to use all of your instincts. What does that mean?
Well, Sandy Meisner, initially, everyone's talking about the method. And I had a teacher when I sought out a teacher, and I didn't have so much money. So I had this teacher, and I don't want to bring his name up, but he wasn't a very good teacher. He was more interested in performing than he was in teaching. He was focused on himself more than he was. And the way I discovered that, when I woke up to that, was that he was directing a TV show, and he didn't use any of the people in the class in the TV show. And I realized he doesn't really even believe in himself. He doesn't believe that the work he's teaching is of any value to him.
Right.
I said, that's crazy. We had talented people in class, very talented. Some of them went on to be very successful, but not because of him. But then I left, and then I found Meisner, and this guy had filled me full of ideas about, you know, anything that he picked up along the way, he just threw at us. But there was no real insight into who we were, or, you know, real guidance. And then Meisner had a very specific technique of improvisation. It was great. And it came with an objective on the one hand, and the other person had an independent activity. And you play off the other actor. And it resulted in some kind of an emotional final gesture that was inevitable if you just stayed with the rules of the technique, you know? And it was good. And I said, it's pretty cool. And it got us used to improvising within a structure. Some people improvise just all over the place, and they get just talk, whatever it is. But if you're really listening, it's another kind of thing. If you're really listening, that has a lot to do with acting. So it was that. It was that structure that working on those exercises with Sandy that really opened the door to some of that stuff for me.
What do you think works best for you in terms of direction? You said that Schlesinger both left you alone and was helpful. And it sounded like that was like the sweet spot for you, somebody who left you alone but was helpful. I wanted you to just elaborate on that. Like, what does that mean? How can somebody leave you alone and also help?
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's let me describe John. Let me clearly describe my relationship with John. John Schlesinger is a British director, gay fellow, and he was doing this movie that really was from a book that had gay aspects, but actually the book really was about loneliness and friendship. And that's when I took to it, I said, this is what this book is about. This character is lonely. He can't find his way into the human family in some sense. He was auditioning. I found things that I saw, I said, you can break somebody's heart with this film. And there's a lot of comedy here. I was the person who put those kinds of words to this script. And that's why I got the part, I think, eventually. But John Schlesinger took acting lessons in England. And he must have taken them from someone who's connected to Stanislavski in some way. Of course, Stanislavski, everybody has those books. An actor prepares, and and they're good books, But acting is beyond the books. But anyway, he went to class, I think, for a little while. And so he knew some of the language. He knew, and I had come from acting classes. So he, in some way, spoke the same language that I did. In a certain sense, he was able to talk in terms of objectives. That's where he focused on what does he want in the scene and stuff like that. Very good idea, very good thoughts to bring to a set. And then he appreciated improvisation. And he asked for us to improvise around these scenes. I don't know where he got that from, but Dusty and I did a lot of improvisations that were recorded by Waldo Salt. And some of those improvisations got into the movie. So John came from various, different kind of background, but really he came from the same kind of, really helpful background and a parallel background to me. Also, John came from doing documentaries from the BBC. Also, John Borman, who did Deliverance, also came from making 100 documentaries, as did Schlesinger, the two of them. And that means that they were exploring how does a story come forth through the behavior and statements of others, where they live, the details of things, do you see? How they eat, how they, whether they, are athletic or work out or they smoke or whatever. What are the things about them? Do you see what I mean? How do they behave, and what are their dreams and stuff? Whatever it would be, they see the details of life that they put together for these documentaries to bring the truth forth. What do they choose? It's a pretty good exploration for a director. Both of these guys, tops. So, and Schlesinger, when he would use all these things with me that he used in acting class, I guess, but also he had a wonderful sense of humor, John Schlesinger, and a real deep caring for each of these characters. I loved John. I loved working with John, and I was very fortunate to work with him and many other directors, and they're all different. And John, I remember John would come into a scene and he would have terrible concerns that he put the camera in the right place. And me, as a young fellow, I thought, why don't you put it over here? No. And he would then if I do that, then I won't have this, and I've got to sort of like that. It was almost like every morning he had to go through childbirth or something to get the baby delivered. But it was always so beautiful, as I recall it. What a passion. He ached to do it right. He knew there was something there that had to be brought forth. And it was a very beautiful experience. He's a great director, no question about it. For me, and maybe because of this similarity in the acting approach,
Mm-hmm.
this search through an acting approach,
Mm-hmm.
he was able to deliver that great piece.
I really hope people see this movie, Mercy, to see what you deliver in this movie. You have a full-on fight scene. I mean, not to give too much away, this is not really a spoiler, with Jonathan Rhys Meyers, and you're in your 80s. I mean, it doesn't seem like it was much of a stunt double, because I'm seeing your face. Tell me what this part of the work is like at this age.
Well, I've always been athletic enough. I was never a great basketball player. I loved to play. I loved football. My dad wouldn't let me play football. I would have been a good receiver or something like that, maybe even a quarterback. But I didn't initially I didn't know how to throw the football until I met a fellow by the name of Kyle. He's sitting right over here. He's working on a film set. But I wanted to play football. My dad wouldn't let me play football. And he said to me, he said, "You're an artist." And I was an artist, physical artist, actually, at the time. Or whatever my dad saw in me, you're an artist and you don't want to take a chance on injuring yourself. Now, my dad had a bad back from an accident, a head-on collision coming from a golf tournament. He was a golfer, and it destroyed his career. So he couldn't play professional golf competitively after the accident. And admirably, he never complained about it, never. But it was tragic because he was a great coming golfer in the era of Bobby Jones and stuff. Anyway, he said I couldn't play. That was the only thing he ever stopped me from doing. Then I said, well, if I can't play, because the golf team wanted me on the golf team, and the swimming team wanted me on the swimming team. And so there was a competition among the coaches. And then I wanted to play basketball, and they didn't let me play basketball because of that. And then I finally, in college, they played in a small college, Catholic University in Washington, D.C. And I was able to make the team when I was a junior in college, to make the basketball team. It was a big deal. But then I realized I wasn't that good. So I realized that they needed to use one of their young scholarship guys. And I said, I'm not going to play next year. You guys, go find these young kids and go play. But anyway, I was an almost athlete. I was a pretty good golfer. But anyway, but the one thing that I could do, and from the time I was a little kid, was I would play, cowboys, good and bad cowboys, and I would fall off rocks and do all this stunt stuff, as a little kid. Because when you're a little kid, your bones are supple, and I enjoyed that, right? And I found I was good at it. I'm a pretty good dancer, I'm good physically. I'm pretty good physically. So I'm okay. Like I'm in 75 percentile, or like that. I'm not great, but I'm good at that. See? Anyway, I remember I was working with Tom Cruise, and I was competing with Tom Cruise. Now, I was a lot older than Tom Cruise, but I was doing the same things he was doing. If he jumped from one thing to the train we were, this wooden train that they built. There was a platform, and he jumped on it. And I saw that there was padding underneath in case you slipped. So I was about to give it a try, and somebody said, "John, I'm not with you." And but anyway, I've always been like that. But then I did several boxing films, and I learned to box a little bit. And I have very good combination punching and good coordination. And so those fight scenes, when I do a fight scene, it's very comfortable for me. And if I get hit, I enjoy it. I enjoy taking the punch, right? So that's what I'm good at. That's all my athletic ability comes down to that. I can do that, you see. I can fall off a train or something like that. But when I did those scenes with him, I have a lot of confidence. I can throw a very good punch, and I can, and I know how to play. But Jonathan Rhys Meyers, in that scene, I take Jonathan Rhys Meyers' head, and I put it against the post, right? We worked it out together, that little scene. We worked it out. We didn't have much time. I said, "Here's what we'll do. I'll slap you. You take 2 punches at me. Then I'll whack you, knock you against the door, take your head, bang, bang, and then take me off for that." See? So Jonathan Rhys Meyers looks at me, okay, nothing. He got it like that. Well, he's a musician. He's got a lot of things with music and timing and stuff like that, Also, he's athletic. And I didn't, this wouldn't happen with any two guys I know. I knew that when I was going to bang his head against the wall, we didn't talk about this. I was going to grab the back of his head, and he was going to have to bang his head against the wall. Now, we didn't have, the money for somebody or the time to put some kind of rubber thing there so he could really do something. Yeah. It was a piece of cement that he was, right? So what he had to do is he had to fake it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, if I pushed him, I would spoil it. You see what I mean? I could actually bang his head against the wall.
Yeah.
That kind of trust is impossible to find.
Yeah.
But he had confidence in me, and I had confidence in myself, and I had confidence in him, right? So I do the punch, which I knew I could do very well, and he took it so beautifully. And he actually put some blood. So it puts a little blood in my mouth. So when you hit me, I'll spray it. You know what I mean? So it'll be a bang. Yeah. Good. And then we get up against he staggers back against this. I grab his head and I do this, but I don't put any weight behind it. I let his head carry me.
Yes.
You see what I mean?
Yes.
He's doing it. I'm not doing it. And I bing and back twice. And it was like secret, I hit you twice, but then we'll do this, Bob. Good.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing.
Who the hell would do that? Anybody, you know what I mean?
Amazing.
How would you trust me not to do something stupid?
Right.
But anyway, so I let his head. Now, he did this thing where he came back and he arched his back. It was like a ballet move. It was so fantastic. He took him all the way back here, right? And then like that. It was unbelievable. It was like working in a great ballet, right? Yeah. And then I took him off that thing and threw him against something else. But anyway, there was so little. It was like code.
That's amazing.
I'd say this, he'd say that. No one else knew anything. And we said, roll the camera. Let's go.
And it looks so good, John, too. Like, that's the thing. And I'm a little picky about that kind of stuff.
Right, yeah.
I have to feel like that's really happening. Mm-hmm. There's a question I wanted to ask you for about 20 years. Why weren't you in Love Streams, the movie?
Oh, Love Streams. You know about that. Did anybody ever see Love Streams, the play?
No, but I know all about that. I talked to Bo Harwood about that play.
Wow.
It was an amazing time, right?
Right. Well, John Cassavetes, who you're talking about, Bo Harwood was his musical guy, right? And John Cassavetes, I mean, when I look back at my career, we say, because I'm 80 something, 84. And I look back on my life like that. I see the beautiful people that I was able to work with. So many wonderful people and wonderful, and just people, never mind their great gifts. It's some very, very talented people as well, talented artists of my lifetime. Great. And one of them was John Cassavetes. And John Cassavetes was one of the funniest people God ever created, and one of the most honest, smart, tough, honest people. Boy, I wish he were around today. Wow. He'd be so important to us. He should be in the Senate.
Mm.
He was an amazing person. So honest and open about anything, you know. Anyway, John Cassavetes cast me in this play, Love Streams. They were going to do 3 plays, and this is his way. I think this is John's way, one of John's ways of moving toward a piece that he would do as a film, you know. So he would try out things. He constantly had readings at his house. He'd write down some kind of a script very quickly, and then he'd invite actors he liked to his house, and he'd make the pasta, and we all sit around and we just read a piece, you know. And so he saw me. My wife had invited him to see me do Shakespeare. I did Hamlet at the college because I wanted to play Hamlet, and so I made my own production at a college, Northridge College, and my wife said we should invite John Cassavetes. She knew I loved him and all this stuff. And Jenna Rollins, right? And they came. They came to this college production in Northridge. And I don't know if he ever liked it, but he liked meeting me, you know, and he knew that I would do things out of the ordinary, you know. So he said, come, you know, come do this play with me. We didn't make any money, for no money.
Right.
He had 100 actors for no money for about 3 or 4 months, maybe, you know.
Amazing.
And he had found this garage area, and he rented this garage in a building, and he translated it with a very lovely guy who designed it and kind of built it into a play that would house. It was a very the set was minimal, but it was interestingly designed. There was a place that looked like could be an alleyway or a bowling alley or something like that in the piece, and then he had a kind of a house thing, and then it could be anything, you know. And then he had about 50 seats, maybe not even that. And he didn't give any seats out. You had to stand in line to get the seats. It didn't cost anything. You just had to get in line to get them. So that means anybody who wanted to see that thing, and that means journalists or anybody else, have to stand in line. And he was a wild, interesting fellow. 50 seats, nothing, right? Here are these people who worked very, very hard. And anyway, I did the play with him. And I had this wonderful experience of working with the great John Cassavetes. And I got to know him very well during that piece. And Jenna. And the story was a brother and sister who love each other and can't have any other relationships because of it. That was what it was about. And they're both crazy. And I had a great time working with them.
But how come you didn't do the movie?
Well, the reason why I didn't do the movie, that's a very long-winded approach to this question.
I love it.
and the reason I didn't do the movie is because I actually didn't feel comfortable in the rewrite he made. And I didn't say anything about it, but I didn't feel comfortable with it. It was asked me to do a couple of things I wouldn't be able to do. So I backed off it.
I see.
And then I did Runaway Train instead.
And that was a good choice. And now we have John Cassavetes in that role, which I think is amazing. You know, the role that you
right. That was one of the last roles he did.
That's right. It all
And
worked out.
that's exactly right. So you now have John, and you see him in the duress of
Yeah.
his sickness.
Yeah. What was the peak moment for you, do you think, in terms of the work that you can remember? I'm not talking about successful or even a moment that like you think properly connected with people. I'm talking about just for you. Can you remember a moment within the work where you felt like this is right? This feels right.
I'll tell you. Okay, I tell you. So if you've heard this before and you don't want me to tell this again, it's what I told John Schlesinger at the end of Midnight Cowboy. We have a little skeleton crew of 5 people, and we're on a dirt road in Midland, Texas. Dusty's finished his work. Nobody else is working. They're just doing a little shot of a dream sequence, me running down the road half naked in Texas, right? That's all they needed. And we're at this hotel, just a couple of people, as I said. And I do this scene, and I come back, it's 115 degrees in Midland, Texas, maybe more. And hot, sweltering day. A lot of humidity, too. And I come back after that, after the whole experience. And meanwhile, John Schlesinger and I worked every day together for this time period. We relied on each other. But he never took me into seeing what was going on with the film, nothing, which was good. And he did it because he didn't want me to be self-conscious. And I felt very comfortable that I was doing a good job. For some reason, I didn't want to see myself anyway. I just wanted to do the work. So I come back, and the van is there, and I walk around into the shady part of the van, and I see John Schlesinger, who's a shorter, bald-headed, robust fellow, and he's sweating, and he's red-faced, and oh boy, I really thought he was having a heart attack or something. He was really, and I said, John, what's going on? Are you okay? And he said, what have we made? What have we done? We've made a movie about a dishwasher who goes and fucks a lot of women in New York. What have we done? And I knew he was having an anxiety attack. And I grabbed his shoulders and I looked at him and I said, John, we will live the rest of our artistic lives in the shadow of this great masterpiece. That's what I said to him. And he looked up at me and said, do you think so? And I said, I'm absolutely certain of it. I had to bring him out of it. I had to say the most extravagant thing to bring him out of it, right? I mean, what a brilliant, that's something that was from God, from God to John.
Yeah.
And it did bring him out,
yeah.
But it turned out to be true. It really is a masterpiece.
Right.
And
right.
And then John says, John, would you like to come by to my hotel room? I want to show you a record I've discovered. Song, I think you might. So I went, I said, I certainly would. He never done that to me before, included me in anything. So I showed up at the room, and he had Nielsen Schmielsen record, and he played me Harry Nielsen's version of Everybody's Talking.
Unbelievable.
And when he did that, my arm, the hairs on my arm stood up. And it's such a crazy thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
The hairs on your arm are a test of whether something is important or beautiful or whatever it is. Yeah. It's an amazing little trick of human, the human being. It's a little blessing that you get.
Yeah. John, they're going to kick me out. Let's do this again for when you have like 4 or 5 hours or even a couple days. Jon Voight, I thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham, formerly IFP. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com
or wherever you get your podcasts.